Ben.
Thank you. And I first want to thank the Green Bay Fellowship for inviting me back. This is the third sermon I've given to the congregation, and I'm very pleased to know that I'm being sent out over the airwaves to 2 other congregations. Today is Palm Sunday, the beginning of Holy Week, where Christian denominations commemorate the passion, death, and resurrection of Jesus of Nazareth. In consideration of this, we have a question that we must explore. Who killed Jesus of Nazareth? The answer to this question has haunted Christianity for 2,000 years. Currently, all Christian denominations will have Good Friday services where they'll read from one of the 4 Gospels. And in all cases, they will read these without any commentary. They'll read them as they're written. And because of that, it perpetuates what is not true, that the Jews, the Jewish people, the priests, and their descendants are responsible for the death of Jesus of Nazareth. In my classes at LLI, I have a class called The Passion of Jesus of Nazareth, which is 4 hours long. Just to advise you, I'm not going to give you the 4-hour class right now because we don't have that time. However, I'm going to condense it down to 15 minutes and hit certain highlights. So if at the finish of my sermon, you feel I missed some points, it's probably because I didn't have time. But I'm going to hit some highlights. We will start with the song that we had just heard from Jesus Christ Superstar, "This Jesus Must Die." That phrase comes right out of the Gospel of Mark. It was said by Caiaphas, and he was saying that because he was afraid. Why was he afraid? One thing that must be understood historically is that the Romans had conquered the Jewish country, which they called Palestine. That was not a term that the Jewish people liked. They generally referred to themselves as Judeans or Galileans. And you have to keep that in context. They, the Romans, were in charge. The governor, Pontius Pilate, at this time frame, was, for all practical purposes, an absolute dictator. He had 2 charges: keep the peace and collect the taxes. And he had total authority to do it. Whatever he decreed was just the way it's going to be. There was no appeal if you weren't a Roman citizen. He made sure that those taxes were collected, and he did whatever he wanted to do to keep the peace. Now, here is one interesting fact that I myself really didn't learn until I was in my early 60s. And that is the chief priests, the Jewish chief priests, the ones we saw in the video, they were real people. They all served at the pleasure of Pontius Pilate or whoever was governor. In other words, if he didn't like what they were doing, or if he did not like what they said, they were gone. And if he didn't like you, disappearing could be a very final solution for you. So when Jesus comes into Jerusalem, and the crowds, and according to all 4 Gospels, they scream out, "Hosanna, the Son of David." They were stating that Jesus was a descendant of King David. Therefore, he had a right to the throne of Israel. This obviously terrified the chief priests and elders, because they knew that the Romans were the ones in charge, and that the Romans were going to determine who was running things in Judea and Galilee. And they fully understood that Pilate would hear about this rabble-rouser coming into town, and the crowds, no matter how big or small, were shouting out, "Son of David." So the song accurately reflects the dilemma that the Jewish priests had. Now, the next most powerful clue as to what actually happened that week comes from the Gospel of John. And it's something that's often overlooked. In the Gospel of John, it says that Roman soldiers went with the Jewish guard from the priests to arrest Jesus. Now, here is just a historical fact. If the Romans were present, and we accept the gospel saying that, the Romans were present, it must be understood, number one, Roman soldiers only reported to Roman officers. They did not report to foreign officers. That was a Roman law. So the Roman soldiers that came had their Roman officers. Those Roman officers only reported to the governor. They were not ordered around by the chief priests. It was the other way around. They told the soldiers or guard that was sent by the chief priests what to do. And if the Roman soldiers were there, they were there because Pilate wanted them to be there. Therefore, Jesus was arrested because Pontius Pilate wanted him to be arrested. And if Pontius Pilate wanted Jesus arrested, no matter what the chief priest felt, it was irrelevant. He had supreme authority. So Roman soldiers were there, therefore Jesus was being arrested because the Romans wanted him arrested. This is not to say that there may not have been chief priests who agreed with this. I mean, there probably were some. But the fact of the matter is, it was the Romans that came there. Now, think of the short video clip of the Black Jesus. He says to the penitent, "I was arrested by an angry mob of government officials, beaten for a crime I did not commit." Who was those government officials? They were Romans. And he was charged with sedition. Whether he was charged with blasphemy by the chief priest and the Sanhedrin, once again, is irrelevant. If the Romans were arresting him for sedition, I can tell you that Pilate did not care if the Jewish Sanhedrin thought he was guilty of blasphemy. The Romans did not concern themselves with the locals' religious beliefs. They were only interested in maintaining the peace and collecting the taxes. Now, in all four Gospels, they will say that the Jewish people cried out, "Crucify him! We have no king but Caesar. Let his blood be upon us and our children," and many other sayings. These statements probably never happened. The governor did not try people or individuals, say like Jesus, in front of crowds. He did it inside the building where he was located. Number two, he wouldn't care what the crowd thought. He would just call out the Roman guard and have them dispersed if they annoyed him bad enough. And the final historical fact is, why would Jewish people scream at a Roman governor who they hated that they had no king but Caesar. These are the parents, these people are the parents of a generation that fought an absolutely bloody war in 66 AD against the Romans, where over 1 million people were killed and the city of Jerusalem was sacked and burned to the ground. And we're going to say these people are the ones that said things like that? Probably not. Here are the historical facts of what happened to Jesus of Nazareth. Jesus was arrested by the Romans. The Roman soldiers came and got him and arrested him, probably because of what happened on Palm Sunday when he came in and the crowd was screaming, "Hello to the Son of David." Jesus was interrogated by the Romans. He was tortured by the Romans. Then he was tried by the Roman governor, Pontius Pilate, who in turn sentenced him. And he sentenced him to death by crucifixion, which was a Roman punishment. Only the Romans crucified. The Jewish people did not kill their prisoners or their convicted felons by crucifixion. That was a Roman punishment. And Jesus died on the cross guarded by Roman soldiers. And here's one other interesting fact right from the Gospels. When Joseph of Arimathea went to take Jesus' body and buried it, he went to Pontius Pilate and asked for the body. He didn't go to the Jewish priests and Sanhedrin. They had no control over the events. He went to the Roman governor and said, "Could I have the body?" Every point here has the word Roman. The Romans were in charge. The Jewish people had no say in the matter. They were basically bystanders watching the Romans enforce their law. And ironically, all these historical facts are buried in the Gospels, yet the message still sent is that the Jewish people are responsible. After the Holocaust, the Jewish Holocaust of 1941 to 1945, in which 6 million Jewish people were murdered by the Nazis, some Christian denominations decided to relook at what was the message being sent by these Gospels. In 1965, the Roman Catholic Church came out with a decree exonerating the Jewish people and blaming the Romans. In 1998, the Evangelical Lutheran Church of America came out and definitively said, you cannot use the Bible to blame the Jewish people for the death of Jesus. Yet, those congregations and all others still read the Gospels as they are without comment. So even though both the Catholics and the Lutherans have said the Jews are innocent, they will still read the Gospels, which will say, basically, the Jews are guilty. There is a message weaved through the story that we're talking about here. And that message, once again, comes out in Jesus Christ Superstar. And a little side note, I started listening to Jesus Christ Superstar back in 1970 when it first came out. I thought it was one of the greatest, at the time, songs that I've heard. It's also what started me on my journey to learn what I think is the alternative visions of early Christianity. And in that song, it is, "Could we start again, please?" And I'm going to read you some of the lyrics here. And they go, "We think you've made your point now. You've even gone a bit too far to get the message home. Before it gets too frightening, we ought to call a halt. So could we start again, please? Could we start again? And the answer to that question, which was so prescient at the time, is yes, we have to start again. We have to relook at what are we commemorating during Passion Week? What is it? What is the message we want to send from the passion of Jesus of Nazareth, his death and resurrection? Unfortunately, for the last 2,000 years, the message has been distorted and it has caused a lot of misery to a lot of people. It is now our chance going forward to give a different message. Thank you for having me here. I consider this quite an honor.